Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for a super awesome, exciting, and an interactive webinar session on how to enhance the potential of your employees. You must be wondering who this bald fellow is. My name is Solomon Salvis. I'm the CEO for EduRiser Learning, a leading leadership and a talent development company developing organization culture and future readiness purely by the power of game-based learning, business simulations, and experiential learning. I'm very happy to inform that I've been with ASCENT for almost 9 years, right from inception. So today's topic is very exciting. And I remember a quote which says, a CFO asks CEO, what happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? The CEO says, what happens if you don't invest and then they stay, right? So my dear friends, I'm sure as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, you guys are super excited about enhancing the potential of your employees. So to deep dive, we've got an awesome guest today, and I'm going to be introducing the guest. So let me begin with introducing our esteemed guest, Purvi Sheth, who's the CEO of Shilputsi Consultants. She is a second-generation entrepreneur and an accomplished leader, being associated with the firm for more than 25 years. Purvi is a respected leader and strategic mentor with a successful background in elevating organizational performance through skillful leadership management and HR restructuring. Effective in boosting and impacting business performance and productivity, she helps cultivate talent engagement through advanced leadership processes and their implementation. So welcome, Purvi.
Thank you. Thank you, Solomon. That was a very warm welcome and lovely to see you again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, let me inform that Purvi is also onboarded as a mentor on Power Up, which is an ASCENT mentoring platform.
Right.
Super. So I see a lot of entrepreneurs already joined in. And Purvi, what I've seen is there are a lot of questions which we have got from the entrepreneurs. So what we'll do is we'll start with certain questions which is already common. Okay. Since the topic is on how to enhance the potential of your employees, let me start by asking you this question. How do you identify employees with potential to leap ahead?
Great question. And yes, I've been thinking about this question a lot. And, you know, it's a question that I often get asked. And one thing about potential that you need to know as an entrepreneur and as a business promoter is that potential by definition is something that does not have previous history or data. It is capacity to do something in the future. So when you're looking at potential, you know that it is an unknown and that you are looking for an unknown. But the way to develop potential, to first identify potential, is very important. To say, where does potential lie in our people? You identify it sometimes by on a day-to-day basis, look at the skill levels, look at what are they doing that is special. You also look at where they have been able to go beyond the call of duty, where they have been able to do something different. So there are different ways in which you can gauge potential. The other way of gauging potential, of course, there are now tests, and I'm sure, Solomon, you have some of those as well, that actually tell you where the potential of individuals lie. Once you've identified potential, you need to start working on developing it and mapping it to roles that you may have in the future for the individual. So developing potential, the prerequisite is first identify potential, make sure that you get, you know where you are headed with the individual, and then help the individual map out what they can do in the future continuously. And this is one thing that I tell a lot of the companies that I work with: promote for potential and pay for performance.
Nice. Promote for potential and pay for performance. That's nice. That's nice. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So Let's go to the second question, Purvi. How to build middle management levels and map career paths for employees?
So, middle management, when you're building middle management, one thing is to look at your middle management and say, again, where are they going? What is their risk-taking ability? What is their collaborative ability, ambitions, their ability to handle ambiguity, and try and understand which way they will need to go. So helping middle management is a very, very big thing for especially mid-size and small-size companies, because a large part of our workforce rests in middle management.
Sure.
As SMEs, we don't have huge CXO numbers, right? We have largely a middle management. So to move to middle management and to continuously upgrade them is very, very important. The way I would say is that you need to have a belief that you want to do this. Very important when you're developing middle management is to also create acceptance. So middle management themselves should be convinced they want to move to the next level. They want to do some of the things that you are trying to make them do. And then try and work, give them incremental responsibilities. So apart from training programs, apart from skill development, work on management skills, work on developing people skills, work on developing leadership skills. That is very, very important. And then allow them to keep growing, give them room to make mistakes. One thing that I found, and again, as mid-size and small-size businesses, we don't have much room for mistakes. And middle management needs that room so that they can grow. And as a promoter or as an entrepreneur, that is very important to do as well, to say they will make mistakes as they grow, but we'll make sure that we'll cover that.
Super, super. So what I hear you saying that the intent is very, very important first.
Yes.
Okay, and once the intent is there, then you build a particular platform for developing their leadership skills, business skills, management skills, and give them chance to fail as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Super, super, super. In fact, I was just referring back to one of the framework which, since I've been working with a lot of corporates, I've also been looking at that they have a framework which is a competency framework in place, right? So there is Ramcharan's leadership pipeline framework which says managing self, managing others, managing managers, managing function, business, and enterprise. So some kind of a semblance in terms of a competency framework which can be built across for the organization, right, from junior, middle, and senior level, and then develop their functional and behavioral skill sets. And this is what most of the large organizations which I've been working with have been doing. So if SMEs can also start using some kind of a framework for developing the junior, middle, and senior management, it will give a nice flow for their growth and for development.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there is a time to do it. Sometimes it's too soon to do it, and sometimes you're behind the curve on it. So it's very important to know when is a good time to start developing your frameworks, when is it a good time to start, because if you're a business that's not been around for too long, for example, or are pivoting your business, then the frameworks may not be relevant. So another piece that I would add to that is that when you're making the frameworks, make sure that the timing is right and relevant, and the frameworks can evolve over a period of time. One thing that I don't recommend for a lot of SMEs is to make very complex frameworks. There's so much out there in the market.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
Academia has so much on offer. Make simple frameworks, make simple areas that you can work with, that your people can work with, and look for great incremental changes and then go for big leaps. Don't start with the big leap first.
Absolutely, absolutely. Completely agree on that with you, Purvi. All right. So we've seen the current situation. One of the questions was very specifically from the COVID and the pandemic, which is going on right now, and we're seeing the situation like that. So a question which has come from one of the entrepreneur from a COVID pandemic perspective is, COVID pandemic has disturbed the entire organization's inflows. Okay. In this scenario, how to retain and keep the employees motivated while they are working from home?
Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story or a couple of examples. When we started with the pandemic, one of the things that I was encouraging a lot of our clients and the entrepreneurs I work with, saying do a little bit of training and do a little bit of kind of skill upgrade and try and work on that. We had one company that found a series of small programs that they did: COVID hygiene, work from home, little bit about, ergonomic postures and so on and so forth. And another company that didn't do a series, they just did two big programs. One program on communication, 12 days communication only, communication skills, and another program around they're in a financial services, so another program around that space. The learning was very interesting. What happened was that the first company didn't find that the training took them anywhere. And the second company, there was a huge change in motivation from a work from home perspective. People were far more excited. The difference was value versus substance. One thing that's happened in the pandemic is somewhere we have overemphasized the work from home aspect.
Yeah.
I think that's a given now. That's going to happen. We're talking about hybrids already. So even if things were to open up, work from home is a reality. So let's not focus on that. My view and my offering would be focus on growth and development of people. 80% of what everybody wants is growth and development. Yeah. And in that, try and put training, development, all of that focused on providing value to individuals and focused on providing substance to individuals. Yeah. So you keep them motivated by that. Over and above them, yes, things have changed. People's focus is on family. Keep in touch. Be sensitive to familial issues, because that's now become very important and the primary concern for a lot of employees. So keep those in mind for sure. Continuously have group meeting, bond with your people. Learn how to do things in the online world instead of lamenting that we don't have the offline world. What can you do that works in the online world? And you'll have a few hits and misses. Some programs will work, some training will work, some executive education will work. Find the balances that your organization can handle.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the balance is very, very important for everybody out there. Okay. Since I've been doing a lot of work with various corporates, and I see a lot of them get too much of hassled in terms of the number of trainings which happen. That also may not be required. Absolutely. In a big way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think sometimes you have to learn about what makes it work. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a group meeting. I mean, we know there's a company in the media sector that I was advising, and there are 3 promoters. They did a big meet of about 100 of their employees and staff, and all they did was just talk about their lives, the fun things that have happened in their lives, how they've grown, how they've matured. And people just love to listen to those stories and take them in. And that's all it takes. So Absolutely. Sometimes it's just a simple storytelling session.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, that works very well. That works very well. Nice. All right. So with that, let's move forward. When we're talking about the skill and the skill upgradation part of it, there's one of the questions which has come, which says employees don't want management to do skill upgradation expense. All right. Instead, you give that money to them directly. Mm-hmm. So he's asked, or she's asked, I don't know, how to deal with this. How do you motivate employees to develop their own skills, take ownership of that? I think so. That's what his or her question is.
Okay. Good question. And yes, a lot of people seemingly are not interested in their skill development. Yeah. But At the same time, remember value versus and substance versus just trying to do skill development. So my submission is, first try to understand what people really want. When they say, when you have perceived that they don't want skill development, what message have you really received? Is it that they don't want skill development, or they don't want this particular skill development? That's number one. So it's very important to find out what is their area of interest. One of the things that I found, and Solomon, I am sure at some level you have too, that younger people are seemingly dismissive of learning and development, but actually they're the ones who take it in like a sponge the most as well when they go through the learning and development cycle. So very important to actually continuously work on understanding what they want. 2, the expense. Cardinal mistake to think of skill development or investment in training as an expense. Yeah. It's an investment, and it's not an investment that you're making for them, it's an investment that you're making for yourself as an entrepreneur or a business owner. So very important to remember that, because the moment you think of it as an expense, you make it an either or, your employees start thinking of it as an option.
True.
Training, skill development, upgradation, all of that is not an option. It's par for course. It's part of the job, part of being employed with you. So that's not an option. What you need to do is really say, where will we channel our energies in the learning and development ecosystem?
Sure.
Right? Create that culture. Make sure that learning is a part of culture. Solomon, I'm selling your business full scale. But do make learning mindset and culture predominant in the company. They will lead and see this when they see you as an example, that the CEO or the promoters are excited by learning. Attend few programs. I know of CEOs who didn't attend the programs themselves, and there was very little attention that was paid. The moment the CEO started attending the programs, of course, first of all, everybody was very attentive. Absolutely. And of course, they enjoyed the program. And the CEO did too, because the interactions became so exciting. So those are some of the interesting things that you can do. But don't give employees an option of either training or I'll give you the money otherwise. Don't give that option. And a lot of companies tend to do that. And don't think of training as an expense.
Nice. So what I hear you say is hyper-personalization based on their job descriptions and the work which they're doing in the organization. How do we focus on each individual in that particular area? Okay.
Either individuals or teams. But the idea is to understand what they need. What is typically done in large organizations as a training needs analysis, yep. Right? We need to do that at a slightly more micro level with smaller organizations to understand what do they really want.
Sure. Sure. And the second element which you beautifully mentioned was that consider this as an investment and not as an expense. That's right. Super, super. And one beautiful point you mentioned in terms of how do you develop that culture right from the CEO and the top. So there's one question which comes up is easy everyday steps for an entrepreneur to create a performance culture.
That's a tough one because there aren't any easy steps, but I can give you a few everyday steps. Right? So, entrepreneurship, and I've been practicing entrepreneurship for a long time, and I started as a mentor to entrepreneurs because of exactly this reason. And it's a great question, whoever's posted it. I can't see the questions, so I don't know if they're up there, but the idea of entrepreneurship is when entrepreneurs come together, maybe two partners come together for a common purpose, right? Somewhere you start working on that purpose and you build an organization. Performance culture starts at the top, and holding yourself accountable as an entrepreneur, as a business head, is the first step in creating a performance-led culture. Last week, I was doing a call with 5 promoters. They're 5 partners of a business. And they were talking about making a performance oriented culture and making a very extensive performance appraisal system. My first question was, can I see your KPIs and can I see your KRAs? And they looked shocked. It was almost horror on the face. But that's it. That's where it starts. You can't tell others to perform unless you have yourself. And you can't understand how a person feels when they are being held accountable unless you've been held accountable yourself. So first thing, start at the top. Second, make frameworks. Make simple and easy frameworks. Small KPIs. In today's world, there is a concept called OKRs. Make short-term goals. Given how dynamic the world has become, given how much it's changing, make short-term goals and start holding people accountable for those. Big aspect of this is communicate, explain, communicate, explain, communicate, explain. Keep communicating what you're looking for. What does performance mean to you? What do goals mean to you? Your people are not going to understand this by just a policy. They need to understand it from you. So keep communicating, keep explaining what goals are, what you're looking for, what is performance in your eyes. Every entrepreneur who's attending this session today, if I ask them, what's your definition of performance? Each one will have a different answer.
True.
Your employees don't know that. And therefore, tell them your interpretation. And start with smaller goals and do this periodically. Assess performance periodically. Don't allow it to go by the wayside and say, okay, we'll do it now at the end of the year. So if you're starting now, start now, do it every quarter, have small chats, maybe even sometimes monthly, to see how people are doing. Find out what is holding them back. Help them with that. And finally, see what your ecosystem needs to create a performance-related culture. I'll give you an example. I was working with a company and the CEO called me in to say people are not performing and there is an issue, and did a deep dive diagnostic. Very simple things. The company had grown over a period of time. They had outgrown their office. They'd taken another small space on another floor in the building. They had to rejig the pantry, put a few chairs and tables in the old pantry. Space was a constraint. There was no place for people to sit and chat. There was no place to even get water from the water filter.
Oh.
Those small factors made a big impact on their performance. We changed just the office layout, bigger office, airier office, gave people more space. Also then started talking to them about performance. It made a huge impact. So sometimes it's really the small things, but make sure that your ecosystem is ready for performance, right? Are you ready to even absorb the performance that comes your way?
Super, super, super. So what I hear you saying is the culture sets at the top and then it is percolated down.
Yes.
Okay. One other thing which I have also learned is that give them ownership. And there's a beautiful quote which I have which says, nobody ever washes a rental car. If I don't own it as a culture or the values of the organizations, I will not imbibe that in myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice. All right. So let's go to the next questions. We also got some question and answers coming up in the chat. So let them come. Let them keep on coming. I will in some time take up those particular questions. Okay. Another question which we have here is, do you recommend having custom development programs suited to each manager's and leader's needs? And how does one go about doing this?
Right. I don't recommend custom for each manager's need. I think you have to identify who are your critical people and key people in the team. And maybe for those you will make custom. especially if there is a career path. So if you're saying that, look, here is an individual and I want him to become my COO, or here is a person and I want her to become my CFO, then yes, it's good to look at custom programs or custom development plans. Otherwise, it's better to try and say, what does a larger population need, and try and work with that.
Sure.
The way to do this again would be to identify where these people are in your teams that you want to develop, first of all. Why are you developing them, right? Going back to the whole performance versus potential, understand what is potential, how you're going to look at their potential, and what you have in store for them for that potential. I'll give you an example. I had someone working with me, great potential, and I always swore by her potential. However, I realized over a period of time that the potential she had was in an area that I had very limited scope in my business for.
Sure.
So while developing people, remember that look at their potential, develop them in that direction, and make sure you have the opportunities for that. Second, the kind of development. Development comes in many forms and formats. One is, of course, and here again, Solomon, I'm going to help you out there. You have learning development, gamified learning development. You have programs. You have a lot of bite-sized learning that happens now. You have learning management systems.
Yep.
You have trainers, coaches, mentors. So identifying what's needed and then finding the right kind of development. Sometimes it's executive education aligned with maybe a university. You have, the IIMs, etc., who have a lot of executive MBA and executive education programs. You could also have online training that gets done through all the LMSs. And then gamified learning, of course. And then you have one-on-one individual development, which is the coaching, mentoring, very important aspect of developing middle management and senior management. And I highly recommend using coaching and mentoring as a purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have been working with a lot of corporates and I found out that quite a lot of times they focus a lot on what is called as learning journeys rather than just one-off kind of a program or one-off kind of a intervention there. It has to be a learning journey. And what I've seen they're beautifully doing is the assessment is first part of it. So first you assess where does he stand on certain skills, certain behaviors, certain mindsets. So the assessment is very important. And once the assessment is done, then you can develop those skills required. But also ensure that after the entire intervention, do one more assessment at the end of the intervention. So you'll be able to see how the needle is moving from where he had started to where he has reached now.
Yes, very important to do a measurement of the impact of the learning.
Yeah.
Very important to have opportunities within your organization to see the effect of the impact, right? The person may have moved, the needle may have moved, but has that benefited the organization per se or your business per se? Absolutely. And that's very important. So understanding that is extremely important.
So what you're saying is all the learning has to be focused on what kind of business impact can it create.
Yes, absolutely. And how can it help the individual as well? You're not there only to do it for business impact. Of course, you want the individual to grow as well.
So when we are on this particular part, when we're talking about impact and effectiveness, there's one question which has come up, which is how do you measure effectiveness of training and skill? Could you throw some light on that as well?
Effectiveness of training and, sorry?
Skill. It says how to measure effectiveness of training and skill.
Okay, I'm not sure I get the question right, of effectiveness of skill, but let me just tackle effectiveness of training.
Of training, absolutely.
Yeah. So training, once you've done training, there are various ways in which you can measure the impact. There are, of course, surveys, feedback, questionnaires, there's quizzes. So there are many ways in which you can actually get feedback and get to know whether the training was impactful. three areas that I have found very helpful for a lot of companies. One is post-training, give it some time and then measure impact to see what has changed in the individual. So let's say you've done training around communication. What has changed in that individual's job and in that individual's efficiency and productivity, or that individual's deliverables, that you can say you can attribute to this training that you did. So that's one way of doing it. The other is, there are some things that are hidden. They don't have an immediate impact, but they're observed by seniors, they're observed by others. 180-degree or 360-degree assessments help in that.
Okay.
Ask another functional leader, you've been dealing with this person, what was that? How did that work out? Ask the customer, you've been talking to this person, has anything changed? Have you seen something different? These things give you a lot of the hidden impact of training, which you won't get through surveys, questions, questionnaires, and quizzes. But those are very effective to know the immediate, because you'll know whether a training program was helpful or not, and whether to continue investing in it or to maybe look for other pastures for investment.
Super. Some of my conversations which I found, even if you can ask the employee who's gone through a program and he says, okay, what went well, what did not go well, what do you think can be done better, right? So will you then apply this learning in your personal and professional lives? Right? That itself could start and trigger the thoughts of how to implement whatever he or she has learned through the entire training intervention.
Absolutely. And individuals sometimes don't get it immediately.
Yeah.
I run this program, and in that program, it's for women leaders. And what I found was that post the program, they love it. They say, yeah, this has helped me a lot. 3 months later, there's a completely different perception of where it helped them. So what they saw immediately as the help, 3 months later, it's different. And I can tell you, 1 year later, just yesterday, I was talking to a couple of our cohort members, and they've talked about how some of the stories that they heard from some of the speakers changed their lives at a personal level, got them to grow in their lives. So remember that you won't see the impact of training immediately. A lot of companies want the ROI right now, right here. And that is very hard around training. You don't get it so easily and so quickly.
Nice. So when we're now talking about this topic of training, there is a question regarding Gen Zs and Millennials, all right? So we work with a lot of Gen Zs and Millennials, and whatever we do, they feel entitled and do not value the same. How to stop this entitlement?
This is at least the 799th time I have been asked this question.
Interesting.
It's a universal question, and at a personal level, I have this question too sometimes, and it keeps me up at night. So totally understand. But I have two things, and I was working with a family managed business, and one of the things that I was telling the promoters was that we all talk about succession planning, but there is something to be said about progression planning.
Uh-huh.
And in the context of your question, I'm going to talk about 2 points of view. One is the seniors themselves.
Okay.
As a senior, remember that what you do and how you look at yourself is very important when you look at the Gen Z and you look at millennials.
Right.
As a senior, and most people today, all of us, me included, very reluctantly turn old, right? We're not ready to grow old. But there is a tsunami of millennials and Gen Zs coming towards us. So how are you upgrading to the next level? And that's your progression plan. And that's when you look at how you can help your teams, who are the young people, to move forward with you. Now, one of the things that I have noticed, and this is something that happened with one of my clients recently as well, is that Gen Z and millennials are entitled. right? Don't create those camps though, right? Don't say it's them. They're all now a part of the workforce and it's a part of all of us. So that's the first thing that I would say. Don't think of they are different, we are different. We're all now part of the same workforce. You're becoming the senior and progressing, and they're progressing behind you just as much. That's number one. Two, deal with it. Millennials and Gen Zs are entitled. They've grown up in a world which has allowed them to become that. As Simon Sinek said, that this is the world that they have known. They know the world through their mobile phone. Stop thinking of what you wanted as a 26-year-old. It's very different from that, and don't try to change them. True. So deal with it. They are entitled. Don't try to change that. However, I've also noticed in a lot of the work that I've done with a younger generation is that they're very sensitive, and they're actually looking for a lot of hand-holding, looking for a lot of empathy. Try to use that method to understand what they want, right? And they may come across seemingly as very confident, knowing what they want to say and what they want in life. But when you scratch the surface, you'll see very soft individuals who are looking, sometimes very childlike, looking for help and mentorship. So learn to do a little bit of the scratching of the surface, so to speak, right? And you know, the other thing that I believe is that try not to create positions of power. Either they are powerful and hold you, or you are powerful and hold them.
Sure.
Try to work with them in a collaborative manner. That works very well with Gen Zs. Make them a part of your plan. So giving the example of a company that I was working with, a young girl, 24 years old, very bright, very smart, looking for a senior role. And so she was, the company said, okay, we'll work with you as a partner for some time and see how it's going. And it went very well. She was performing brilliantly. But she wanted a seat at the table with the meetings, with the clients, with the CEO. And I remember one of the senior people saying, but you know, she's 24. How can I have her in a meeting with the CEO? And I said, just try it. Bring her in. See how it goes. What changed for that 24-year-old was she was beginning to get very disillusioned by the exclusion. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, the moment she was included, she was very excited. Her efficiency went up, and even the CEO liked a lot of her ideas. Nice. But we have a preconceived notion. How can I bring a 24-year-old into the CEO's meeting? How can I put her in front of the board to present? I was sitting on a meeting the other day as a board member, and I had a 28-year-old present to me, and I was thinking back that was I as confident as a 28-year-old? I certainly wasn't. But the world has changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for putting that light on that, Gen Z and millennials. I'm also now looking at some of the questions which have come up in the chat, in the Q&A.
I can't see them for some reason.
No problem. I'll read that for you. Okay. This is pertaining to a question which has been asked by Vishal Mehta. Okay. And he says, hi Purvi, in the last few months, salary levels in tech space have gone up 2 to 4 times the current salaries. Right? Large MNC companies have a lot of open positions, and MSMEs and SMEs become a hunting ground. Any best practices to retain an employee when salary offered is almost 3 times? This is a question asked by Vishal Mehta.
Vishal, if you understand Hindi, I just want to tell you, dukti rag, dabadi. So this is a tough one. And if you are saying that only 3 to 4 times, that's good for you. I have been working with companies where I've seen exits where people are getting 10 to 12 times. and in a record breaking 17 times the salary that this person was getting. So completely empathize with you. I am so sorry for all that you have been facing as a part of the tech space the last few months. It has been a tough time. So first things that I've been telling the companies that I've been working with on the tech space is that don't panic. Remember that there are some things you cannot compete with your multinational competitors or other companies, and there are some things that you can do better. So when salaries are rising, find where your threshold is and don't lament that you can't go beyond that, because that's the max you can do. This is the best you can do. That's number one. Two, like I was mentioning earlier, create an environment and culture. In my books, people jump around for salaries, and the initial euphoria of high salaries right after the lockdown and people had salary cuts was very high. So people have jumped around a lot. But that phase is slowly dwindling. What people are now looking at is culture, is looking for growth opportunities, looking for ways in which they can grow themselves. So make sure that you have a fun culture, a happy culture, a learning culture, and a development and growth culture. Value and substance. Offer that to your people. You may not be able to offer money all the time, and all of us in small and medium-sized businesses face that. But be fair in the way you promote, be transparent in the way you measure performance, and reward performance, and make sure that the individuals know that you are going to reward performance. One thing that I have done with a couple of companies that has worked well, we looked at mid-year increments. We looked at providing 6 monthly bonuses so that when your cash flows are in place, you're not getting challenged. So if you give bonuses every year, see if your cash flows can work around that and give your people bonuses every 6 months. That additional cash in hand is very important to a lot of people, and it ensures retention. They say, okay, should I move now? No, it's already August. In October, I'm going to be getting a small variable pay. Let me stay back. So that helps. The other thing that does help is to constantly show them a growth path and to show them where their performance is and what they can do in the future. You might even need to over promote sometimes, Vishal, but that's par for course. So yes, young 24-year-olds will be getting a seat at the higher levels, but again, what can you do?
Absolutely. In my organization, what we have also done is, apart from only incentivizing them for results, part of that we have broken it down in terms of the activities which we will do, which will generate that result. So incentivize on the activities also. Okay, so right from one level to the second level to the third level and the fourth level. So that also could help in some possible way.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think that's a very good way. I'd only caution you slightly, Solomon, on that, is that when you incentivize for activities later on, when you stop incentivizing for activities, because you say that's a part of the, that's like when my math teacher used to say, I want to see the steps, but ultimately, right, the marks came to you for getting the right results.
Yeah.
Those steps, so just be careful on what you incentivize. Absolutely. But it's a brilliant area that you've pointed out. There could be some things that incrementally you can incentivize people for, and some steps to get to where we ultimately want to. And in tech, especially if you're doing development, for example, yeah, huge scope there. So that's a great one, Solomon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. One more question which has come from an anonymous attendee, especially focusing on process of L&D. He or she, how does one set up the process of L&D? Example, how to set up a training calendar for the organization from planning to execution.
Okay, and we don't know the size of the organization?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I would advise is, if you're a mid-sized organization, start with getting, first of all, a small HRMS. Technology in HR is very important. And if you're looking for training, get what is called a learning management system. Helps in putting exactly all that you asked for in place.
You've got the answer, which says 200 people. You've got 200 people, it says.
Okay, great. So then you definitely want an HRMS and you definitely want an LMS, a learning management system. That's the first thing to put in place that I advise, because that automates a lot of your training calendar. It puts into place a lot of the reminders, etc. And it also, a lot of learning management systems now come with content. So you can also put content in place. But first thing, when you're trying to put training in place and learning and development in place, understand what is your learning and development need. Very, very crucial and critical to gauge that. What is the learning need in the organization? Map it out in different areas. Could be competencies like people management, could be competencies like leadership, communication, time management, so on and so forth. Could be certain very technical areas of your business. And then could be certain overarching areas that you want people to get developed in. I often recommend that don't ignore this third area. It could be smaller things that are not today relevant to your business, but will be over a period of time. Digitization, ESG, these are things that are now gaining a lot more importance. Diversity and inclusion, compliance. Very important to bracket your training and learning and development. That's number one. Understand what is the need of the organization and then try and find ways in which you will do this. Various methodologies, I'm just going to repeat them again. Gamified learning, online learning, bite-sized content, use of films, webinars, seminars, executive education, and there's a host of learning opportunity out there. Find the right ones that fit your needs. Not all of these fit your needs. Very important to have an expert to help you identify those. Your LMS will take care of the rest. Once you upload content, you've got the calendars in place. The learning management system will make sure that it tells people when they're ready and where the next program is and what they need to do for it.
Excellent. And just to add, not all the content has to be bought, Purvi.
Yes, not all has to be, it has to be customized as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So we've got one question from Vinayak Bhatt, and this is about the performance of people. How to handle those employees who have worked with us for a very long time and are not interested in developing themselves. They are slowly becoming misfit in our company's changing culture. Question from Vinayak Bhatt.
Vinayak, again, totally empathize with you. I lead a firm that is 44 years old. I'm a second generation entrepreneur myself and have faced this over and over again. So this happens to a lot of organizations. So you're not alone, number one. Number two, when your long-standing employees, you see them now starting to get into the mid-suite and they're not progressing, figure out if they're doing the same job that they did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And is that the job that they need to do even now? Do they have other skills? Do they have potential to do other things that maybe did not exist earlier in your firm, but today you can offer them? So make a career track for such employees. Find the right sweet spot for them. That's very, very important. Make the effort to do that. There are biases that creep in, especially when you have long-standing employees. You see them in a certain way. You have your own filters in the way you look at them. Sometimes get an outside assessment done to see what is their potential. Maybe they've developed areas that you didn't realize because they've just been around for so long. The whole taken for granted syndrome. So try and do some of that. Find career tracks. Sometimes I found they can become very good mentors. They may not have new skills, but use their old skills to train the younger lot or the newer lot. So In some companies, I remember there's a company that I was working with, they had 3 people who were mentors. They're a research company, and 3 people that were mentors in that space. That's all they did. Just keep training the younger lot and who came in. They weren't accountable for results. So you may find opportunities for them to do some of these things. But most importantly, if they're not moving forward and they're not interested in developing, you need to think about whether they need to be in the organization for much longer. And you may find ways in which, and do it in a very humane way because they've been with you. There's a concept called outplacement, where you can actually tie up with some of the others, tie up with some agencies that can help you place them in other places, give them time to find a job. But maybe there's a place for them that's better for them. So do them that favor. Sometimes by keeping employees for too long and beyond the timeline that they should be there, you're doing them a disservice as well. So you actually care for them, actually let them go. And your options would range, and have these conversations. They're tough, but they're important.
Nice. I like that word, outplacement.
Yeah, it's a big concept of where you have people in the company that you need to let go of. Not always for disciplinary issues, but maybe there's no place for them in the company, the things have changed, roles have changed. You actually work actively on the outside to get them a job somewhere else. There are agencies that do that. There are, and you can even tie up with companies. I have personally made consortiums of 5-6 companies that actually do this. They
Nice.
allow their people to go from one to the other and welcome that.
Nice. So as we are close to winding up the session, I would request Ruchika to please put up a feedback poll here and request all the participants to kindly share your feedback with us for today's session. It will not take you more than 30 to 40 seconds to share your feedback. All right. And that's feedback from Ruchika. All right. So continue and let some questions come up. We've got a couple of more minutes left and I'm going to take some more questions there. So Purvi, there's one question which is about the younger versus the older contribution perspective is how do we raise the contribution from older, loyal, long-standing employees in comparison to younger, energetic employees?
I was talking about biases. That's a bias. That young is energetic and older is sort of, but yes, the contribution of older employees. And sorry, can you just go back and talk about the question there again? How do we raise the contribution from older, loyal, long-standing employees in comparison to younger, energetic employees? Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was measure. Okay. So how do we raise the contribution? The idea again would be to first of all communicate. Put in very open and transparent performance metrics. Sometimes the conversations are very hard to have. I remember having a conversation with an older employee of a company I was working with, and it was very difficult for the CEO to have that conversation because there was a dynamic history, family, friends, all of that. Very hard to have the conversation, but have performance metrics that are very clear. So that's the first thing. 2, start holding them accountable and see what motivates them. For older employees, and there's a motivational theory. There's power motivation, there's motivation by achievement, and there's motivation by affiliation.
Okay.
Power is your typical politician, right? Someone who wants the power. I want the hot seat. I want the CXO title. You have some who are motivated by achievement. I want to be able to achieve this. I want to be able to, get this done. I want to deliver this. And then you have affiliation motivated. That is your long-standing employee. They're with you because they're loyal, They feel for you, they want to do things with you and for you, and that's what motivates them. The bond with you. So understand where that bond is and work with them and use the bond to help them perform better. You know, sometimes I've found it's just a simple thing like the CEO saying, this is making me very unhappy. This is making me very sad, or this is putting me in a very difficult position. Just the fact that they have a bond with you will motivate them to try and perform better, because now they're saying, okay, you know, because of me, this person has been put into a bad spot and I've had a relationship for 10 years. Let me do something. So use different motivation styles. With your older employees, you have to spend the time. Make sure that you have open, transparent performance metrics and constantly assess. So don't do it once a year, do it twice or even 4 times in a year, right? And keep assessing so the person knows where they're progressing and where they are not. And your conversation is not about, nahi yaar, Ravi, ye to ho gaya tha, or nahi yaar, Solomon, you know what happened in my family. And you're like, oh my God. Don't do that. Clearly say this is what was expected of the deliverables and this is where you've fallen short. People like informality, but they don't like randomness. So be very careful. Don't be random about the conversations you're having. Be informal with the conversations that you're having. Yeah?
Nice. One of the things which I've also noticed is how do you build the spirit in them to leave a legacy behind?
Yes, absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
Super. So we are almost at the end. Purvi, if you could summarize, and what are the 3 steps the entrepreneurs today need to take? Just 3 steps. It could be bullet points or it could be steps of how to enhance the potential of your employees. How can they get started with it? What are the 3 things which you think you can help them out with?
Okay, I'm a consultant. Solomon, can I end with a PPT with your and Aktana's?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So just first of all, here are some of the things that you can do. Distress times lead to change. Change your attitude, your own behaviors, your own assumptions when you're talking about people, your expectations, and change some of your plans. Re-engineer your strategy with the moving times. Think about whether your expectations are now, especially post-COVID, especially when you have a younger generation amongst you, are your expectations changing? Predict and see what you want to deliver as you go forward. Assumptions, especially for family managed businesses, we come in with a fair number of assumptions of our long-standing employees, of our younger employees. See if you can change some of that and adopt newer ways of working with people. Is prejudice, right? Develop a point of view. Don't waste a crisis. Very important when you are looking at leading people. Make sure if you have 200 people, look at the data that you're getting from your 200 people, right? And where is their performance today? Remember, your leadership, new ways of doing business, and your plans are going to take you to the next level where your people are. Engage your people. Don't make promises. Reskill, redeploy older employees or employees that are not performing. And finally, leverage cross-organizational capabilities and deliver the organization. Make sure that you have your business needs and your customers' needs taken into account. What is the value proposition that your people bring to the table? And finally, remember, you will be judged by what you do, not what you say. So retain your people in the best possible way, and try and work through the changes in assumptions, expectations, and what you want from your people.
Super, super, excellent, excellent. That's a very comprehensive perspective, Purvi, which you gave. Excellent. So as we come towards the end, thank you so much, Purvi, for a great session today. Thank you so much for your valuable time and sharing your insights with us today. I'm sure each one of us has huge learnings from today's exciting and important session. Personally, I've taken a lot of notes. One of the key thing for me is the intent first, right? And then the culture starts at the top, right at the top, and then it percolates down. And the third beautiful thing is create a culture, a learning culture, a fun culture, a development culture. All right. So
Absolutely.
super.
Absolutely. I think that is very, very important.
Excellent. So thank you so much, all the participants, for joining us today and being so super enthusiastic and participative during the entire session. Thank you very much. Stay safe and stay blessed.